Version 12.5 is out right now with some really great new features. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to use one of those really cool features to create this lovely welcome sign. It's also compatible with your trial version of your Vectric software. During lockdown, we were really proud that we created all kinds of different content to keep our customers busy and hopefully their mind off what was happening out there in the real world. A lot of those projects never ever got cut. So for this project, I'm going to look back at one that Beki made, which she never, like I said, she never did cut, but we thought was a really nice trial project that a lot of people might want to cut to get used to how to use their Vectric software. So this is my version of that sign. Essentially what it is a backing board with a standard sort of straight-sided inlay put into it. And then we have these extra little bits that can fit onto the front that you can change up over the year for different holidays or for different events and so on. And of course, you can make your own if you'd like to and swap those out with all kinds of different things, like maybe a birthday gift or whatever you'd like to do. But it was a great sort of use of a few of the really nice tools that we have, including the inlay toolpath, showing you how to use an allowance to make sure everything fits together. But things have gotten better since then. So this project was originally created back in version 10 of our software. And since then we've added sheets, which makes it much easier to manage a multi-material project like this. And with version 12.5, we've added in the ability to duplicate sheets with all of the vectors and toolpaths and 3D content if you happen to have that on that sheet. So I'd like to sort of demonstrate how to do those things using this project. Again, that was created quite a while ago and really deserved to see the light of day. So right now I've got the file already open. You see there's multi-sheets here. We've got our first sheet, which is called design sheet. It's important to note that I've opened this up in Cut 2D Desktop, so you should be able to cut this in almost any of our core software. And we're not using anything too complicated for features, so there's nothing really to worry about there. This is our design sheet. So because we've already gone ahead and cut the thing, I don't actually need to show you the original design sheet that I had made up. It's long gone now, but this is actually the thing that we're going to do. So we have our design sheet. This is the backing board. So we have some texture here that I've drawn on. We've got some borders, and then we also have this little area here. So this inside circle is the pocket that we're going to use to be able to push in these little additions. So this little house here has got a knob on the back that you can push into that hole, which is kind of nice. So easily swap those out. And this outer circle here is kind of the maximum size part that we can create to fit in that area. Because if not, then we're going to start to encroach on where we're going to put the text. The next sheet here, which is called text options, one of the things that I wanted to do with this project, I just didn't want to make it for our English speaking audience. I thought I'd take a look at some of our other user bases and what languages they speak. So we've got welcome in English, in German, in French, in Polish, in Portuguese, and in Spanish. Of course, if you have purchased our full version of our software, just not the trial, then you can go ahead and make whatever words you'd like to fit on this board, and I'll show you how to do that. But for right now, this is kind of a selection we have to choose from. I've got another sheet that I'm going to show you to use in a second, which is called inlay text, and we'll look at that. And then this last sheet is those actual shapes that I talked about being able to add onto this. You'll notice that there is an extra one here that you don't see here, which is the heart. That's because I didn't cut that. I didn't have a piece of material quite large enough for the heart to fit. So, but I'm still going to include it in here for you. So let's have a look at the sign design. Now, when you're doing a job like this, one of the best ways to do it is to cut the male part that you're going to fit into the female pocket. That way you can test fit your text, in this case, into the actual pocket on the sign. That works in most cases depending on your job setup. In our case, it does work out perfectly. So what we're going to want to do is choose one of these variations of the word welcome and actually put it onto our sign. So what I'll do is I'm going to use the English version of welcome. I'm going to select that from the sheet. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say copy to sheet sign design. and you'll see what it will do is it'll instantly just copy that over to the sheet called Sign Design. It'll put it in the same location that it was on the original sheet based on your XY position, so it'll just show up wherever that ends up being. You have to move it to where you want it to be. Now, what's kind of nice about the word welcome is it's probably the smallest, besides the Polish version, or the shortest variation of the word welcome. So I can actually take this and size it up. Now, I'm sizing it up before I rotate it to fit, because what I want to do is once I get it sized up roughly to what I want it to be, and I'm happy with that, I'm going to right-click on that again, and I'm going to copy that to the sheet called inlay text. And if I zoom out a little bit, you'll see that now it's over here on my inlay text sheet. That's important because on this sign sheet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it slightly. Just so it fits properly, and I don't want to size it up anymore. I can use my cursor keys to fit it in place, so we can put it right about there. Oh, I didn't mean to size it down, so let's just do that. There we go. Yikes, that looks okay. I'm happy with that where it is and angled the way it is. Now, what's nice about almost all of these words, especially the longer ones, you don't need to size it up, but so me sizing it up first and then copying it over is an important sort of workflow to do. So let's leave that as it is right now, and let's go over to our inlay text sheet. Now I'm doing this all in the 2D view because it's easier to manage sheets in the 2D view right now in our software. So I'm going to grab this and we'll press F9 on my keyboard, or I can go over here to our align and I can align that to the center of my job. So let's select that text and let's quickly go over to our toolpaths tab and have a look at our inlay toolpath. So when I select that, there are two different options here. We can choose how we're going to create the male part, and we can also choose how we're going to create the female part. And the different combinations will give us different results. In this case, I like to have a straight walled male inlay. I could also have a stepped one, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. If you're interested in how to use the stepped inlay toolpath, I've actually created the on-air sign, which I actually go into in depth on how to use the stepped version of this and the whole version of the female inlay part. So if you're interested in that, have a look at that video. So for right now, I'm going to use the straight-sided. As soon as I do that, it's going to pop me up a dialog filled with options for this toolpath. Now, this is essentially a profile toolpath, but what we're going to do is we're going to keep in mind the geometry of your tool so that when we create the pocket for this to fit into, they'll both fit in perfectly as long as you choose the same tool and you use the same tool on your CNC machine when you cut out these two parts. So we're going to have a start depth of 0, a cut depth of, let's just go through right through our material. So we're going to go Z and we're going to add a little bit to that just so that we'll cut through that. We're going to use an 1/8" end mill. It's going to take about 9 passes, but that's totally fine. We're going to machine on the outside of the vector, which is great. All this is fine. We're going to add in some tabs. We'll add some tabs and we'll edit those. And we'll just pop those tabs in somewhere where it seems convenient. We don't want too many tabs because of the way this is shaped. It'll end up causing us a bit of grief trying to get them off. But I think that's pretty good. So we'll close that down. And then we can go and have a look at naming our toolpath. We'll just leave it the way it is, male inlay number 1, and we calculate that. It's going to warn us that we're going to cut through our material. That's okay. And then we can preview that visible toolpath. And there we have the raised bit, or the male inlay part of our inlay. So that looks really good. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut that first. Then we're going to come back and we'll go to our actual sign design. And we'll grab this vector here and we'll close this down. Actually, before we do that, we're going to create the tooling for everything else that we need. So what we're going to do is take a look at the toolpaths that I already have created. Now, one of the things people forget about when they are using Cut2D or Cut2D Pro is that you can use a V-bit in your toolpath to give you some nice sort of 2.5D cutting going on. And that will give us a way to add some texture and some details along a line or a profile line. So if we use the profile toolpath, you'll see if I double click on that, I've got this outside frame selected. We pop over to our 3D view and turn on our vectors. We can preview, we can calculate that, and we'll preview that toolpath. And you'll see what I get. Now, if we go back in the toolpath again, the trick to this is I'm using a V-bit and I'm cutting on the line. So it's right down the center of that line. And when I do that, you'll get that nice sort of V cut to it. And this is great also if you want to create a chamfer, because we don't have the chamfer toolpath option in Cut 2D or Cut 2D Pro. This is a nice way of kind of making a faux chamfer, if you want to call it that. The next thing we're going to do is look at the texture, so we'll double click on that, turn back on my vectors in the 3D view. So I drew these vectors just freehand using our freehand drawing tool. It was pretty easy to do, and then I'm going to use that exactly the same way we did a second ago. We're going to use that 60-degree V-bit, we're going to cut on that line, and we'll calculate that, and then if we preview that visible toolpath, it should look pretty nice. Now, I'm happy with that. I think that's going to give it a nice sort of faux wood look to it. And I think it worked out really well in our end design. You can see that the stain really sort of stuck in the end grain that was exposed when we used that V-bit, and kind of makes it really pop, which is quite nice. The next thing we're going to look at just quickly here is going to be our cutout toolpath. So we can calculate that. That's really basic. We're just going to cut around the outside of that using that 1/8-inch end mill, 1/8-inch end mill. And we can preview that visible toolpath, and that looks pretty neat. I'll add tabs in the end when I actually go to cut that. And then we have the pocket for the peg. So the last thing that's sort of generic about this, that's going to be the same for any version of this I do, is going to be this little peg hole right there. And that's based on the peg that we're going to cut in on the back of these different shapes. It's a raised peg, and so I've just essentially copied that vector over and are going to go ahead and cut it in there. So if I look at that toolpath, it's a very basic pocket toolpath, nothing special, going at 1/4 inch. I'm going to use, I'm going to remove that out of there. I'm going to use the 1/8-inch end mill from my tool database. Make sure that I choose the right material, which is going to be softwood. Make sure I choose the right machine, and then we're going to have a 1/8-inch end mill, and we'll select that. That looks good. We're going to do offset toolpath, so it's going to work its way from the center out. And that looks great. Now also what we're going to do is we're going to add in a pockets allowance. Now traditionally, we're going to want to make this pocket a little bit bigger. Now to do that, we can add in this allowance. So in our case, we're going to put in minus 0.05 because we want it to be quite large. Now this is going to be dependent on your machine, the tools you're using, and the material you're cutting into, but for me, this works out okay. So we'll calculate that. And if I want to see that, I can go to my 2D view, go to my solid toolpath preview, and have a look at that toolpath, and you'll see how much bigger it's going to get. I don't mind if it's a little bit extra wiggle in there. You know, the kids kind of need to take it in and out easily, so we can swap it out. That might be a little bit too aggressive, so if I want to change that, I just need to go back into that toolpath again, and we can change that to maybe 2 instead, and we'll calculate that. Then we can have a look at our 2D view again. Yeah, that's probably a little bit better. So we can preview that visible toolpath, and let's have a look in our 3D view, and you'll see there's the hole that's going to be left behind. So again, that's pretty much all of the sort of the generic tool pathing we need to do. Now what we're going to do is look at the welcome text. So to do that, we're going to close this down, and we're going to go back into our inlay toolpath again. We're going to create the female inlay. This is going to be a pocket. We're going to use a start depth of 0. You can choose whatever depth you want to go down into your material, keeping in mind the thickness of your male part. You don't want it to be sunk too far in, but you want enough to sort of align it. Also, you probably want it deep enough to go past any of the interesting details that you've cut into, or you've cut into it. A lot like I did with that texture there. It looks really cool if you look at it from the side, because you can see the lighter material sort of fitting in to the darker material, and it really kind of makes it look very continuous and quite nice. So 1/4 inch will be fine for that. We're going to use that same 1/8-inch end mill. Remember that I used to create the male part, so it's the same tool. We're going to choose an offset tooling, that's fine. I can choose to add in my overcut allowance. So it's not like our allowance, our overcut distance here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to make this pocket quite a bit bigger. And again, this is going to depend on your machine, the tool, the material, and you're going to want to create a test part, or what you're going to want to do is what I did, which was cut that male text, try and fit it into your actual board, and then if it wasn't quite big enough, come back and adjust your toolpath and recut it again. So I did that until I found out that it was minus 0.02. That was a good sort of allowance to use, and I can calculate that. And we can go into our 2D view for a second again. If we zoom in, you'll see that it's going to overcut it quite a bit. And you also see that there's a bit of a fillet here that is added in, and that's going to match the actual mail text that we cut a minute ago. So the inlay toolpath will take this all into consideration and make sure that everything fits nicely together. So if we go back to our 3D view for a second and we preview that visible toolpath, there we have it. That looks like just about it. Now, the last thing we're going to need to do for this is to pop over to our shapes here and have a look at how we're going to cut these. Now, these are pretty easy to do. This is the actual profile cut that we're going to do. We're going to use these vectors here to cut out the parts. But you'll see that I've done a little bit of an offset outside of that, because what we want to do is we want to pocket between the post and this vector and then run our profile cut. So if you have a look at the pocket toolpath, it's going to be using, we're going down to start depth of 1/4 inch. I'm going to remove that 1/4 inch tool and we're going to select that 1/8 inch end mill again. That's important. I don't want to do too many tool changes here. That's great. We're going to use offset toolpath. That's fine. And we'll calculate that. Then we can preview that visible toolpath. And you see what's left behind is that nice raised post, which I think is perfect for what we need. Let's go now and do our quick profile toolpath. Notice I had to rearrange my toolpaths there. When I recalculated, it popped it to the bottom. It's good to pay attention to where your toolpaths are and what order you're going to save and cut them in. This is a really quick profile toolpath. We're going to go down the thickness of our material. We're going to add a little bit to that. So we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to use that end mill again, outside. That all looks good. We should add in some tabs. These are huge tabs. So let's make this 1/4 inch. Let's make this 0.125. That's the thickness. We'll add in our tabs. We're going to put one down here. Maybe one there. There we go. Perfect. Close that down. And let's quickly go ahead and calculate that toolpath. We're going to cut through our material. We know that's perfectly fine. Let's preview that visible toolpath. And there we have it. Those should look pretty nice in the end. Okay, that's everything done. Now, that's what I did to create this version of this sign. Now, if we want to go and create, let's say, the French version of this sign, then what I'll do, and this is a new feature in version 12.5, is I can duplicate a sheet. So the first thing we're going to do, because I want to keep both of these languages in the same file, I'm going to go back to my sign design. I'm going to right click on that. And you'll see that I don't have the option to duplicate sheets in there. What I'm going to need to do is to close this down and pop over to my Sheets tab here. Let's just pin that down. I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to go to Duplicate. And when I do that, you'll see that now I have two sheets. The duplicated one has an added end to the name, which is the square brackets 1 square bracket. So if I click on that, let's just flip back over to our Toolpaths tab for a second. We'll see that it's also gone ahead and calculated not only the vectors, but all the toolpaths. But you'll note that there's a little, they're in italics, and there's also a little red circle there. That denotes that we need to recalculate these toolpaths because it wants to be sure that these toolpaths are connected to the proper vectors, or that we haven't changed the vectors, or we don't want to. So that's really good, because what we can do now is I can take this welcome text out. I can delete that out of here. I can go and find the bienvenue text from French, or the French version of welcome. I can copy that to sheet. Sorry, copy to sheet. There we are. Let's go back to that sheet again. I can move it down into place. Okay, we'll just zoom in and we'll just, that seems to be about the rest. Size up just a little bit. Like that. Let's right click on that and we're going to copy that. So we don't want to copy it yet because we still have this sheet over here. We want to keep this welcome text. Let's go over here for a sec. Again, let's bring up our Sheets tab. Let's right click on the inlay text and we're going to duplicate that. And we're going to get a duplicated version of that over here. Great. So see, we're going to make sure that we copy this to the right sheet. Let's go back here to the bienvenue one. Right click on that. We're going to copy to sheet inlay text 1. Let's go back here. That looks great. Let's delete that text out of there. Let's go ahead and center that. Go up to our design tab really quickly. Center that in there perfectly. Go back here again. close this down, and then we're going to rotate this and put it where it belongs. And then it's just a matter of recalculating our toolpath. But like I said, the software wants to make sure that we have the right vectors attached to the right toolpath. So in this case, we have our pocket inlay. So if I bring that up and grab this text, everything is exactly the same as before. I can calculate that. And then I can preview that visible toolpath. We'll see what we have. Let's go to our 2D view for a second. Look at that solid preview of that once I turn it on. Again, all of those chamfer, all those fillets are taken into account and so on. That looks great. Let's just close this down. Now we need to recalculate the other ones that are here. So let's just go ahead and we'll double click, we'll calculate that. We'll double click on this one, we'll calculate that. I'm just gonna go through them one at a time. Again, I'm checking to make sure that the vectors are correct, that I'm happy with that, I don't want to change any. Great. Let's calculate that one. Perfect, that looks good. Let's go over here. Same deal, we're gonna go into that toolpath, grab that text, calculate that, click OK. What's happened now is because I've changed the text, it doesn't know what tabs to use. So I need to go back into that toolpath again. I quickly went by that. So we double click on that and I had add tabs, and if I go calculate, it's gonna cut through the material, but it's also saying that no tabs are defined. So I need to go back into that right quick and just make sure that I fix that. Tabs, we're gonna add in some tabs. Put a tab there maybe. Those are separate, so let's put one there. Put one there, maybe over here, maybe there. That should be enough to hold it in place. Close that down, calculate that. There we go, and that warning for the tabs doesn't come up. We can preview that visible toolpath, and there we go. So being able to actually duplicate those sheets using the Sheets tab is going to be really, really handy if you're doing a large job like this, where you've already sort of developed toolpaths on one sheet, and now you want to use copies of that on different sheets with the same vectors maybe, or with different vectors. It's great. It gives you a nice sort of template to get started from if you want to. Now let's take a minute now and have a quick look at the actual process of cutting this in the labs on our CNC machine. As you can see, that turned out really nice, and I think the end result is really, really slick looking. I think the fact that you can use the duplicate sheets option and some of those other versions of the word welcome to create whatever sign you want in any of those chosen languages is a really neat thing. Also, don't forget, if you own our software and you're just not using the trial version, you can create your own little designs to stick on your sign. Make it really personal for yourself. Well, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions at all, pop a comment below and I'll get to them as soon as I can. If you're not subscribed, please do. And until next time, have all kinds of fun, and I hope you're enjoying version 12.5.